Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi, and over the next couple of minutes, we're going to take a look at the top global stories that matter and are shaping the world as we speak. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a long list to cover, so without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. As the relationship between India and Canada continues to deteriorate, a new report by the CBC says Canada has been monitoring the communications of Indian diplomats. According to the report, Canadian authorities have gathered both human and signal intelligence during a month-long investigation. This intelligence reportedly includes communications involving Indian officials and diplomats. Now, it's worth noting that this information was also provided by an unnamed ally within the Five Eyes intelligence network. The report indicates, and this is actually what we're putting out for all the viewers to consume. The report indicates that Canadian officials made several visits to India to seek cooperation in the investigation into the death of Khalistan terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. According to Canadian sources cited in that particular report, Indian officials have not privately denied the core allegations as well. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reportedly sought the support in this particular matter from the Five Eyes alliance, which includes the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia and New Zealand. This is what the report claims. Canada tracked Nijjar's murder case at home and in India. Moreover, communications of Indian diplomats was gathered and was within the Canadian intelligence. Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance helped in this particular probe, ladies and gentlemen. Five Eyes, unnamed ally, helped Canada track this case. So there is an unnamed ally in the midst of all this particular probe as well. Now, the Five Eyes Alliance, New Zealand, Australia, UK, US, originated as an intelligence sharing pact between the United States and the United Kingdom after World War II. It later expanded to include Canada, Australia and New Zealand, evolving into the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance that we know of today, primarily for sharing intelligence information amongst these nations. What's important to note here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the report that CBC has now put out says that Canada tracked Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder case at home and in India. Communications of Indian diplomats was gathered. Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance has helped in this particular probe, and an unnamed ally, who could that be? An unnamed ally helped Canada track this case. But what people are most importantly worried about at this point in time is the fact that top Indian diplomats' communications was with the Canadian intelligence. Now, again, even as I say this intelligence reportedly includes communications involving Indian officials and diplomats, and it's worth noting that this information was also provided by an unnamed ally within the Five Eyes intelligence network. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reportedly sought the support in this matter from the Five Eyes Alliance. Now, the Five Eyes Alliance, I'm reiterating, includes the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia and the New Zealand. The Five Eyes Alliance originated as an intelligence sharing pact between US and UK after World War II, but Indian diplomats, top Indian diplomats' communications with the Canadian intelligence, that is something that is now raising a lot of eyebrows, ladies and gentlemen. Even as the tensions between these two nations, India and Canada, they are escalating. Well, meanwhile, even as we're talking about this particular tussle point, again that has come to the fore. Take a look at this. Tensions between India and Canada have certainly escalated. They have escalated further following Canada's accusation of Indian involvement in the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, in the latest development on souring ties, India announced the cancellation of visas for Canadians on Thursday. This action came after India issued an advisory urging its citizens to exercise caution. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, addressing the media, stated that Canada is seeking answers from India and is hopeful for cooperation. However, Canada has declined to share evidence related to Trudeau's quote-unquote credible allegations.
Government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course. There are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. That is something of the utmost and foundational importance in a country of rule of law, in a world where international rules-based order matters. We have a rigorous and independent justice system and robust processes that will follow their course, and we call upon the government of India to engage with us to move forward on getting to the truth of this matter. As a country of the rule of law, we have an obligation to ensure that those processes unfold in a rigorous and independent manner, and that is what we are ensuring. At the same time, we are ensuring that Canadians stay protected and that we stand up for the international rules-based order. That is something that we are doing, and it's something we are doing alongside our allies. We're standing up for the rules-based order. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're highlighting how unacceptable it would be for any country to be involved in the killing of a citizen on their own home soil. And that's something we will continue to stand for. I think it's extremely important that as a country with a strong and independent justice system, we allow those justice processes to unfold themselves with the utmost integrity. But I can assure you, the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons Monday morning was not done lightly. It was done with, or Monday afternoon, was done with the utmost seriousness.
Well, now the United States has expressed its concern regarding the development and has called on India to cooperate in the investigation. The U.S. has emphasized that the development is in fact a matter of concern. Take a look at what the NSA of the United States, Jake Sullivan, had to say.
From the Canadian Prime Minister publicly about the allegations, we went out publicly ourselves and expressed our deep concern about them, our support for a law enforcement process to get to the bottom of exactly what happened and to ensure that the perpetrators are held accountable. I'm not going to get into the substance of private diplomatic conversations, but we are in constant contact with our Canadian counterparts. We are consulting with them closely. We support the efforts that they are undertaking in this investigation, and we have also been in touch with the Indian government as well. And I will leave it at that for today, only to say that I have seen in the press some efforts to try to drive a wedge between the United States and Canada on this issue, and I firmly reject the idea that there is a wedge between the U.S. and Canada. We have deep concerns about the allegations, and we would like to see this investigation carried forward and the perpetrators held to account. That is what the United States has stood for from the moment this emerged to public, and we will continue to stand for that until this fully plays its way out.
But meanwhile, it's interesting to note here as well that Canadian spy and station chief of Canadian Intelligence Service in New Delhi, Olivier Sylvester, has packed his bags and is leaving India. Mr. Sylvester was involved deeply with Khalistani terrorists and gangsters who have been conspiring violence in India. In a tit-for-tat move, he was asked to leave the country within 5 days by India. So Canadian spy and station chief has in fact left the country. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. The Pew Research Center has put out some startling information and data for all of us to consume. Let me just quickly take you through that. Indians, 95%, and the vast majority, 70%, many say, who disrespect India cannot be a Sikh. I'm reading quotations from the Pew Research report. And like India's other religious groups, most Sikhs do not see evidence of widespread discrimination against their community. Just 14% say Sikhs face a lot of discrimination in India, and 18% say they personally have faced religious discrimination in the last year. At the same time, Sikhs are more likely than other religious communities to see communal violence as a very big problem in the country. Nearly 8 in 10 Sikhs, which is 78%, rate communal violence as a major issue, compared with 65% of Hindus and Muslims. But that's not all. Sikhs are also overwhelmingly proud of their Indian identity. A near universal share of Sikhs say that they are very proud to be Indian, which is about 95%, and the vast majority, which is 70%, say a person who disrespects India cannot be a Sikh. This is coming across from the Pew Research Center, ladies and gentlemen. Sikhs are also overwhelmingly proud of their Indian identity. A near universal share of Sikhs say they are very proud to be Indian. Today, India's Muslims most unanimously say they are very proud to be Indian, 95%, and they express great enthusiasm for Indian culture as well. But that's not all. That's not all. There's one more factor and angle at play when we're looking at the tussle between India and Canada. Pierre Poilievre, who is the opposition Conservative Party leader, is the preferred choice as Prime Minister by 40% of Canadian citizens, as incumbent Justin Trudeau lags behind. Now, this is according to a new Ipsos poll that was done for Canada-based news platform Global News. The gap between the leaders gives an indication that Conservatives in Canada have high chances of getting a majority to form the government in the next general elections in 2025. When it came to some of the other major issues facing Canada around the economy, healthcare and housing, the poll found a plurality of Canadians thinking Poilievre has the best plans across all the three areas. On the ongoing diplomatic standoff between India and Canada, triggered by Justin Trudeau's allegations of India's involvement in the killing of the Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Poilievre, who's the opposition leader, had stated that the Canadian Prime Minister should come out clean with all the facts. And that's not all. Pierre Poilievre, the man that you can see on your screens, is the opposition Conservative Party leader and is the preferred choice as the Prime Minister by 40% of Canadian citizens, as incumbent Justin Trudeau lags behind. This is according to a new Ipsos poll, let's not forget, that was done for the Canada-based news platform Global News. The gap between the leaders gives an indication that Conservatives in Canada have a high chance of getting a majority to form the government in the next general elections in 2025. And that's not all. Pakistan, a long-standing adversary of India, has seized the opportunity presented by the ongoing standoff between India and Canada. Pakistan alleged that India's purported assassination of a Sikh terrorist on Canadian soil constitutes a quote-unquote clear violation of international law and the UN principle of state sovereignty. Pakistan's caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakkar connected the India-Canada dispute to the ideology of Hindutva promoted by India's Prime Minister. He stated that these ideologues of Hindutva are becoming increasingly emboldened in a way that extends beyond the region. Kakkar also added that the killing of Singh on Canadian soil reflects an alarming trend. He further stated that Western capitals have chosen to overlook this fact and reality. Furthermore, Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mumtaz Zahra Baloch, while speaking to the media, characterized it as a reckless and irresponsible act that calls into question India's reliability as a credible international partner and its claims for enhanced global responsibilities. All right then, shifting our focus now. Zelenskyy, Ukrainian president, is in the United States and is trying to woo the US lawmakers for more aid in his country's efforts to fight the Russian invasion. President Joe Biden has assured Zelenskyy a military aid package that includes weaponry and air defenses, which he stated aligns with the needs of Ukrainian soldiers. When asked about overcoming opposition to aid, Biden emphasized the need for approval from the US Congress, stating, "I'm counting on the good judgment of the United States Congress. There's no alternative." However, some Republican lawmakers have voiced opposition, citing concerns about Ukraine's government and the war's indefinite nature. Zelenskyy faced a more challenging environment than his previous visit 9 months ago. He stressed the importance of military aid for Ukraine's war effort, stating that without it, they risk losing the war with Russia.
But American investment in Ukrainian security and global protection of freedom is working 100%, every cent. Now Putin's list of goals is different. Instead of dictating terms to America, Europe, and the whole free world, Putin is forced to humiliate himself by personally entertaining a delegation from Pyongyang. I want you all to know that America has saved millions of Ukrainian lives, millions, men and women, children and adults in cities, in villages, millions of Ukrainian challenges in our battle for every inch of Ukrainian land. Every day of this war, Ukrainian soldiers hold on with the grip of a bulldog. They chew and choke the Russian occupiers as much as possible. Never before had the Russian dictatorship met such strong resistance. And never again will Russia manage to destroy any other nation.
And together with our partners and allies, the American people are determined to see to it that you do all we can to ensure the world stands with you, and that is our overwhelming objective right now. So welcome.
President Biden will announce a new package of military assistance today that includes significant air defense capabilities to help Ukraine protect its people. These capabilities will help Ukraine harden its defenses ahead of what is likely to be a tough winter, filled with renewed Russian attacks on Ukrainian critical infrastructure. Will also include weapons and equipment to help Ukraine maintain its momentum in the counteroffensive. That includes additional ammunition for U.S.-provided HIMARS systems, anti-armor capabilities, artillery ammunition, and more DPICMs, which have helped Ukraine make gains and, crucially, also helped Ukraine defend against counterattacks. Ukraine is, in fact, taking back territory. It is doing so methodically, step by step, and the weapons that we have provided have allowed them to deoccupy more territory in the last 3 months than the Russians were able to take in 8 months over the course of its fall and winter offensive last year.
But hey, ladies and gentlemen, even as one of the leaders of the NATO pact has given more aid to Ukraine, another NATO member, it seems, is taking a different kind of step. Poland has decided to stop its sale of arms to Ukraine. Now, this move comes as the country's relations have soured over Ukrainian grain exports. Poland, which had been one of the staunchest of allies of Ukraine's, has seen its relations with the country sour over the course of the war. Poland said that it was focusing on building up its own stocks of weapons, nothing more. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki will be facing national elections soon as well. Poland holds parliamentary elections on the 15th of October, and the ruling Nationalist Law and Justice Party has come in for criticism from the far right over what it calls the government's subservient attitude towards Ukraine. Morawieckie's words came after Poland summoned the Ukrainian ambassador to the foreign ministry to protest against comments made by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy following Poland's decision to extend the grain ban. During the course of the war, Poland has supplied hundreds of Soviet-era tanks and 14 MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. It has served as a major transit hub for weapons from other Western nations and provided its military bases for training for the Ukrainian servicemen. Now that's not all. Poland has also spent billions of euros on other forms of aid, from the construction of temporary houses for refugees to donating medical supplies and power generators as well. Details coming in from Russia next. Emergency services cleared debris from damaged buildings in Kharkiv in Ukraine after a Russian missile barrage targeted civilian infrastructure. Kharkiv's mayor, Igor Terekhov, said 2 people were hospitalized as a result of the morning shelling of the eastern city, which is close to the Russian border. He said that there were at least 6 strikes that were reported in the city. In Kyiv, 7 people were injured and buildings damaged due to Russian military attack. Ukraine said its air defense systems had shot down 3 dozen Russian cruise missiles overnight in Moscow's latest barrage, which has caused deaths and injuries across the country. Meanwhile, residents of Kherson faced deadly Russian shelling as well. A man was killed on the 3rd floor of an apartment, while a woman ran for shelter during the pandemonium. 3 people were killed in the attacks on residential buildings, with more killed and wounded in the region in total. Russian missiles pounded cities across Ukraine early on Thursday morning. According to Ukrainian authorities, there were fires that began and it killed at least 2 people, trapping several others under rubble. The early morning missile attack was Russia's largest in over a month and came a day after reports of sabotage at a Russian military airfield in Chakaltsovsk near Moscow. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, former UK Prime Minister David Cameron and MD and CEO of TV9 network Barun Das discuss India, geopolitics and the emerging world order. Catch the exclusive conversation on Duologue tonight at 10 p.m.
2 Indophiles confess their affair with India.
Is it fair to call you an Indophile?
Very much so.
You wrote about China.
A local problem is a global problem.
It's called global inflation.
Who is responsible? And it is Putin.
Duologue with Barun Das, featuring David Cameron. World premiere on Connected TV. Tonight at 10. Only on News9 Live. India's first and only digital exclusive English news stream for Connected TV. Supported by Alliance Broadband.
Well, so catch that at 10 p.m. Meanwhile, in other international news, representatives from Western nations are making their way to India. India, known for its significant role in the cutting and polishing of rare gems, which constitutes 90% of the world's production. Now the West are gathering to discuss the potential ramifications of G7 restrictions on imports of rough Russian diamonds. This move comes as the G7 countries are actively working on a tracing system aimed at blocking the import of stones mined in Russia, the world's largest producer of rough gems. The success of this plan, which could significantly reshape the global diamond supply chain, hinges greatly on India. This South Asian nation plays a crucial role in the diamond industry, employing millions of people in its workforce. The visiting representatives from the West will assess various aspects of implementation during their trip to India. Belgium, ladies and gentlemen, on the other hand, despite not being part of the G7 but a member of the European Union, is also closely monitoring the situation. Well, why? Because Belgium's historic city of Antwerp serves as the world's foremost diamond trading hub. Officials in Belgium anticipate the G7 to announce the ban on Russian diamond imports in the coming weeks as well. This move is seen as part of a broader strategy to increase pressure on Russia and curtail its capacity to finance the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. It's worth noting that the European Union has imposed 11 rounds of trade restrictions on Russia as punitive measures since the onset of the Ukraine crisis. However, Russian diamonds and the state-controlled mining company Alrosa have remained untouched by these sanctions, partly due to Belgium's resistance. Belgium has argued that any EU ban on Russia diamond imports must gain widespread global support, as a unilateral decision could lead to the rerouting of trade away from Antwerp. Poland, on the other hand, a prominent critic of Russia, has recently called for EU sanctions on Russian diamonds, emphasizing that such sanctions could significantly impact Russia's revenue. Russian diamond sales generated over $4.5 billion in 2022, with the EU accounting for approximately $1.5 billion of these purchases. In response to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, the United States had previously imposed sanctions on Alrosa and prohibited the import of non-industrial Russian-origin diamonds into the country. These developments underscore the intricate geopolitical dynamics surrounding the diamond industry and its potential role in international sanctions and trade policies. And moving on, after gruesome visuals of people with lacerations and burns to their bodies and faces being treated by medical staff, at least 5 people killed and dozens more injured in the so-called quote-unquote anti-terrorist operation launched by Azerbaijan in the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan and ethnic Armenians have declared a ceasefire 24 hours after the military offensive. Under the agreement, ethnic Armenian forces in Nagorno-Karabakh will be disbanded and completely disarmed. Now, the territory is recognized internationally as part of Azerbaijan, but large areas of it have been controlled by ethnic Armenians for 3 decades now. It is at the heart of one of the world's longest-running conflicts. The Armenian Karabakh delegation for Nagorno-Karabakh arrived in the Azerbaijani town of Yevlak, accompanied by Russian military officers as well. Armenian Karabakh politician David Melkumyan arrived for talks on integrating the region as part of a ceasefire agreement. The first peace talks between Armenian separatists and Azerbaijan on integrating the breakaway territory lasted around 2 hours. Baku says it has regained control over the territory for the first time in decades, with separatists agreeing to disarm the face of clashes that they say have killed 200 people. Meanwhile, visuals that you can see, thousands of people that have gathered in the center of Yerevan, thousands of people protesting the Armenian capital of Yerevan to protest the government's lack of support for ethnic Armenians in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region after an attack on the territory by Azerbaijan. One of those protesting describes the Armenian government's approach as quote-unquote irresponsible and unsupportive, as another sees a chance of government to change. On Monday, Baku launched anti-terrorist operations, at least that's what they called it, in the region, targeting Armenian separatists. On Thursday, the two sides met for peace talks after a ceasefire was called. Meanwhile, Armenian Prime Minister says no direct threat to Karabakh civilians. He's also gone on to say that, he did not see an imminent threat to civilians in Nagorno-Karabakh, but if needed, Yerevan was ready to receive 40,000 families. It is our duty to ensure a safe environment for our fellow citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh. Last week, in our republic, we made preparations to receive 40,000 families and provide them with accommodation. It is our duty to ensure a safe environment for our fellow citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh. Last week, in our republic, if the peacekeepers managed to negotiate a ceasefire, then why didn't they manage to negotiate an agreement to prevent the attack on Nagorno-Karabakh? We were warning about it. Why didn't they fulfill their peacekeeping functions? Well, now the Armenian Prime Minister, of course, raising fingers on Russia. But the territory, let's talk about the territory as well. The territory lies in the mountainous South Caucasus region of Eastern Europe and Asia, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Azerbaijan and Armenia fought a bloody war over Nagorno-Karabakh back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and it has been the trigger for further violence in the years since. Fears of fresh violence came when Azerbaijan mounted an effective blockade of a vital route into the enclave in December 2022. The Lachin Corridor is the only road that connects the Republic of Armenia to the roughly 120,000 ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. It is a key artery for supplies, and residents in Nagorno-Karabakh reported severe shortages of basic food items and medication in the recent months. Azerbaijan accused Armenia of using the road to bringing in military supplies, which Armenia has come out and outrightly denied. Now, even as experts suggest EU lacks a clear theory in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, Pope Francis has called for all sides to silence their weapons in the breakaway Nagorno-Karabakh region. In Azerbaijan, after the launch of military operations against separatist forces during his weekly audience, and this is what Pope Francis said. The Pope said, "I address my appeal to all parties involved and to the international community to silence their weapons and make every effort to find peaceful solutions for the good of the people and respect for human dignity." Well, now from the tussle between Azerbaijan and Armenia, let's shift our focus to the tussle between China and Taiwan. China has warned Taiwan at the United Nations not to underestimate its strong will on the island territory, while saying Beijing preferred peaceful means to take the self-governing democracy. Addressing the General Assembly, Vice President Han Zheng repeated Beijing's stance, that Taiwan constitutes an inalienable part of China. He said, "No one should ever underestimate the firm resolve, strong will and the power of Chinese people to safeguard their sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Chinese military has repeatedly been staging military exercises against Taiwan." And moving on, ladies and gents, the King and Queen of Britain embarked on the rescheduled state visit to France, happening 6 months later than originally planned, due to the protests that escalated into a civil unrest. Now, their 3-day itinerary mirrored the one intended for March and aimed to rejuvenate relations between the two nations after the turbulence of Brexit. The visit featured grandeur and formal ceremonies, including engagements at iconic locations like the Arc de Triomphe, the Elysee Palace, and the Palace of Versailles. During the trip, the king made history by becoming the first British monarch to address the Senate directly. Officials from the Foreign Office emphasized that this visit would strengthen the already significant relationship between Britain and France. And well, from Europe, shifting our focus to South America, because in a landmark decision, Brazil's Supreme Court has ruled in favor of indigenous rights, specifically addressing the constitutionality of imposing a time limit for asserting claims to ancestral land. 9 out of the 11 justices on the court voted to reject the marco temporal, or the time frame argument. This legal policy, supported by businesses and farmers seeking access to indigenous land, would have required indigenous groups to prove their presence on the land in question back in the year 1988. Now, the Supreme Court's decision was celebrated as a victory by the indigenous groups, as they have been forcibly displaced from their territories by settlers and business interests. Celebrations, shots of happiness, joy, gaiety surrounding the indigenous groups of Brazil. A landmark judgment coming from the Brazilian Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen. 9 out of the 11 justices of the court voted to reject the marco temporal, which also means the time frame argument. This time frame legal policy, which was supported by businesses and farmers, sought access to indigenous land, and in return, they would have required indigenous groups themselves to prove their presence on the land in question in the year 1988. The Supreme Court's decision was celebrated, and you can see on your screens what it means to the indigenous groups in Brazil. Well, shifting our focus. Latest visuals from flood-hit Libya revealed a devastating scene from the city of Derna. The coastline is strewn with rubble and debris. Tragedy continues as bodies remain trapped beneath collapsed buildings and piles of mud that are gradually turning into choking dust. Emergency teams are actively carrying out search operations. The flood disaster has displaced over 43,000 people so far. Libya was hit by a tsunami-sized flash flood breaking through 2 aging river dams upstream from the city on the 10th of September. Today, we're looking at 12 days of this particular natural onslaught. It razed the entire neighborhood, sweeping untold thousands into the Mediterranean Sea, with bodies washing up on the shore in the days to come. 43,000 people displaced, over 20,000 that have lost their lives, and these numbers and figures and digits could very well go on. Even as aid is coming in, there is still shortage of supply and relief material. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even as we're talking about these climate and extreme weather events, let's shift our focus back to France, because France has pledged to ensure to help nations that face climate crisis. France is firmly committed to helping vulnerable countries confronted with the climate crisis, emphasizes French head of diplomacy Catherine Colonna in a speech to the United Nations General Assembly, announcing a contribution of 1.6 billion euros to finance the activities of the Green Climate Fund for the period of 2024 to 2027.
Protect the lungs of the planet. When it comes to the climate, we are now seeing what disasters our lack of ambition could produce. Storms in 1 billion euros, raising it to 7.6 billion euros by 2022. It's about a country that will continue to work tirelessly to protect the lungs of the planet. When it comes to the climate, we are now seeing what disasters our lack of ambition could produce. Storms, fires and floods have marked this year all over the world, claiming tens of thousands of victims. The latest IPCC report and the assessment also prepared for COP28 must alarm us. We cannot look away. Instead, we must act and act quickly and act collectively in the face of these common challenges which spare no nation on this planet. It is urgent, but it is possible. Multilateralism is the only way to go beyond awareness and act with determination, commitment and responsibility. In the face of climate destruction, in the face of the demolition of our natural habitat, in the face of the widespread impoverishment of our biodiversity, you can count on France to stay on the ball.
Well, a welcome step coming there from France. And earlier in the bulletin, we did talk about the souring ties between Ukraine and Poland. Well, why? Because of that grain deal and food security. Well, take a look at this. The first grain ship to sail from Ukraine since Russia reimposed its Black Sea blockade in July crosses the Bosphorus Strait in Istanbul. Visuals on your screens, ladies and gents. Ukrainian officials said the Palau-flagged Resilient Africa vessel was carrying 3,000 tons of wheat when it left Ukraine's Kornomorsk port on Tuesday. It was destined for Israel, according to marine traffic websites, representing the first successful Black Sea voyage since Russia pulled out of a UN-backed deal to export Ukrainian grain. And take a look at this. Rupert Murdoch, a prominent figure in the media industry, has retired from his role as chairman of Fox Corp. The news has already made headlines. This marks the conclusion of Murdoch's impressive 7-decade-long career, during which he successfully built a media empire spanning from Australia to the United States. His son, Lachlan Murdoch, is poised to take the reins of his father's empire. Now, Lachlan will assume the position of sole chairman of News Corp and will continue to serve as the chair and CEO of Fox, as announced by the company. This development follows closely on the heels of 92-year-old Murdoch's decision to abandon a plan that would have seen a merger of his media entities, Fox and News Corp. Well, shifting our focus to Italy now, where Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni urges the United Nations to launch a global war without mercy against migrant smugglers after a surge of arrivals on the island of Lampedusa. How can an organization whose founding document affirms its belief in the dignity and worth of human beings turning a blind eye to this tragedy, is what Giorgia Meloni has said categorically.
How can an organization whose founding document affirms its belief in the dignity and worth of human beings turn a blind eye to this tragedy? I believe it is the duty of this organization to reject any hypocritical approach to this issue and to wage a global war without mercy against traffickers. To do this, we must work together at all levels. Italy intends to be at the forefront of this issue. Africa is not a poor continent. On the contrary, It is rich in strategic resources.
And moving on, Gazans from opposing factions unite on the football field. Take a look at this. The citizens of Gaza said that people are looking forward to these matches as a way of entertainment to escape the harsh reality in Gaza, be it psychological, economic, or political pressures. Football has become an important outlet for the people in the besieged Palestinian enclave, and also a means to bring together supporters of the two main political factions in Gaza, the Fatah and Hamas, who have been at loggerheads with each other for the longest time now. Football that's bringing dissenting sides and warring factions together and closer to each other. And Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has arrived in China's eastern city of Hangzhou, kicking off his first visit to the nation since 2004. Assad is trying to end more than a decade of diplomatic isolation amid Western sanctions. Assad arrived aboard an Air China plane in a heavy fog. The Syrian leader has seldom been seen outside his country since the start of a civil war that has claimed more than 500,000 lives. He is set to attend the opening ceremony of the Asian Games, along with more than a dozen foreign dignitaries, before leading a delegation for meetings in several Chinese cities, including a summit with President Xi Jinping.
China and Syria have a traditional and deep friendship. Syria was one of the first Arab countries to establish diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China and one of the sponsors of the restoration of China lawful seat at the United Nations. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations 67 years ago, China-Syria relations have maintained healthy and stable development. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad also attached great importance to developing China-Syria relations. This is his second visit to China since taking office as president. President Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders will meet with him to exchange in-depth views on bilateral relations and issues of common concerns. We believe that President Bashar al-Assad's visit will further deepen mutual political trust and cooperation in various fields between the two countries, pushing bilateral ties to a new level.
And even as we're talking about the Asian Games, in a significant setback to China's burgeoning space program, Beijing-based Galactic Energy experienced a major failure with its Ceres-1 rocket. This marks the end of their impressive streak of 9 consecutive successful launch missions. The failed mission could potentially hinder the expansion plans of China's Jilin-1 constellation network, which happens to be the world's largest Earth observation satellite network. The ill-fated rocket launch took place from Jihuan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert at 12:59 p.m. Beijing time. However, just 6 hours later, Galactic Energy released a statement acknowledging the mission's failure. The rocket, tasked with placing a high-resolution imaging satellite into the orbit, encountered quote-unquote abnormal performance during its flight. The exact reasons behind this malfunction are currently under investigation. Witnesses reported observing the rocket firing at least 2 flames before it ascended and disappeared into the clouds. A Beijing-based rocket engineer who chose to remain anonymous speculated that this might have been a result of a second or third stage engine breakdown. Galactic Energy expressed its sincere apologies to both the mission's customers as well as its well-wishers in a WeChat statement. They pledged to diligently identify the cause of the failure and work towards ensuring the future success of their launch missions. The Ceres-1 rocket has been a rising star in China's commercial rocket industry, with an impeccable track record since its inaugural flight in November 2020. Just earlier this month, it achieved a significant milestone by launching from a mobile sea platform off the coast of Shandong province, placing 4 satellites into the lower Earth orbit as part of an Internet of Things constellation. This failure comes as a significant disappointment for China's space industry, but it also underscores the inherent challenges and risks associated with space exploration and rocket technology. The incident serves as a reminder of the complexities and uncertainties that continue to characterize humanity's quest for the stars. And well, with that, it's a wrap on today's edition of the Top Global Stories. Lots more coming right on the other side. Keep watching News 9 Live.
Gautam Adani, one of the richest men in the world, or a business honcho, accused of manipulating the market.
अदानी जी 609 नंबर से दूसरे नंबर तक कैसे पहुंचे? सिर्फ एक सवाल पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका अदानी जी से रिश्ता क्या है?
He has given the space, the railways, the airport, which he has no experience also. So the country's interest has been compromised.
Government has been very clearly supporting few industrial groups, including Adani's industrial group.
Target Adani, streaming now.
With all this gear, you must be wondering if I'm climbing a mountain. Well, let me give you a wider look of this place. This is Asia's largest mountain of shame.
A mountain of waste, almost the height of the Qutub Minar.
When you enter capital cities of some of the biggest countries,